Welcome back to Plague of Shadows. Last time we defeated Tinker Knight in his Clockwork Tower, and now we're going to be taking on Polar Knight here in the stranded ship. And my bomb set of choice is still going to be the Sparkler Powder, the Bounce Casing, and the Impact Fuse. They're just too good to not use, honestly. When it says Impact Fuse, it does not mean impact with an enemy. It means impact with a wall or a floor or something like that. So, yeah, if there's a flying enemy, it's probably not going to do a lot against it. Unless you hit it with the, kind of like, if it's far enough away from you to where the casing itself pulses a little bit, that'll actually do damage to enemies, but, for the most part, the casing's not going to do much for you. And also, I need to rectify a statement that I made earlier. Previously, I said that the amount of bombs, like the combinations you can have, was a 5 to the 4th, because I said there were 5 casings, 5 fuses, 5 powders, and 5 bursts. That's actually not true. There are only 5 bursts, but for all the other components, there are 6. So it's 6 to the 3rd times 5, which is 1080. I think that's how much it is. So yeah, it's not actually 625 different combinations. It's 1080, which is so much more than previously. Like, still, it's still a lot, but it's, you know, it's more a lot. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Let's get to the bio of Polar Knight himself here. At home in the cold, Polar Knight guards the stranded ship in the frozen south. Titanic and terrible, he is the strongest and most brutish member of the Order of No Quarter. Sometime in the past, Shovel Knight and Polar Knight have crossed shovels before, and if they battle again, Polar Knight does not intend on a second rematch. Pros: wields a snow shovel, doesn't feel cold but is quite considerate, and cons: annoying laugh, it's like water torture. So, even hinting more that Polar Knight and Shovel Knight have some history. I mean, it was already kind of hinted at by both their dialogue and the fact that Polar Knight also uses a shovel. But now we're getting a little bit more. And I guess that's something to talk about, kind of the stories of both of these campaigns. With Shovel Knight, a lot of things are just implied. Like, you know that Polar Knight and Shovel Knight, and possibly Black Knight, have some history, but it's not really fleshed out all that much. Whereas with Plague Knight here, you're kind of told everything. Like, it's no secret that Plague Knight loves Mona, and it's kind of no secret that Mona loves him back. And we'll be revealing what we need well, what we're using these essences for will also be revealed very easily. So, like, a lot of things are more straightforward, which is kind of a depends on the player kind of thing. Like, some people like having some vagueness in their story, some mystery, and some people like having things told straight out to them because it makes it feel more fleshed out, or it makes it feel like the developers not really intended on some, well, I guess, yeah, like the developers have a story that they intended to make and they made it, rather than kind of leaving it up to the player, which might feel like a cop-out to some people. Anyway, we just got the War Horn. Somehow, even though Shovel Knight was using it in the boss fight against Plague Knight, he had the War Horn. And you know, the other relics, you could have gone to Plague Knight stage last, you know, at least in terms of that second third of stages. So it makes sense that Shovel Knight might have something like the Dust Knuckles, I guess, or the shoot, what am I thinking of? The Anchor. That's the other weapon he likes to use, the Anchor. He doesn't really use the Dust Knuckles, but it makes sense that he have the throwing anchor if you went to Plague Knight stage last. Due to the non-linear nature, you know, you can't really, I guess, fit that into a boss fight very well, is what I'm trying to say. He didn't have the alchemy coin, at least it didn't look like he did, even though you get it in that stage and also use it in that stage. And also, if you decide to keep the trinkets, like the relics, and don't get any of the Arcana, Shovel Knight shouldn't have any of them at all, but that's just kind of a bit more nitpicky than anything else. Bottom line, it's impossible for him to have the Warhorn because now we have the Warhorn, and you definitely have to face his boss fight before you're able to have access to the Warhorn, so it doesn't make sense. These platforms that barfed out Rainbow Liquid, they don't work at all in Plague Knight stage. Well, they kind of work, in that if you stand on them, they go down. If you get off of them, they go up. But, they don't move. They don't barf out their rainbow platform stuff anymore. Instead, they're just stationary. Well, not stationary, but they only move vertically, is what I'm trying to say. For some reason, I could have sworn that you could move them with something. But I tested out a bunch of relics, not relics, Arcana, and bomb combinations on my own time, and nothing seemed to work, so I guess they're immovable. Well, actually, there's one relic, Arcana, geez, that I haven't tried yet, but I really doubt that it's gonna actually do something to it. And we're gonna be getting it in this stage, although, not in this stage, in this part. That's what I meant to say. Something about the vat that's a little bit annoying. If you use it too close to a ceiling, Plague Knight rises up too high to where the ceiling actually pushes him down, and he'll actually go through the vat, and it won't be used as a platform essentially, so that's kind of lame. Don't use the vat too close to a ceiling, is the point I'm trying to get across, because then you'll not end up making a platform. I guess you'll have a little bit of extra time to have a charge, you know, so you could blast yourself, but just don't use it near any ceilings. Also, the vat doesn't... Okay, this is something that is very tentative and something that I don't like to do when I make my Let's Plays. I sort of like to keep them timeless, so I don't talk about things relative. Well, I'll talk about my Let's Plays relative to each other, but I won't talk about them relative to stuff happening in real life, to kind of keep the immersion, I guess. So I'm going to be talking about something that's happening in the future. The Spectre of Torment campaign is going to be coming out for everyone to use on the Switch very soon, as well as the Switch. It's also going to be coming out at the time of this recording. And, from what we've seen, Spectre Knight doesn't really play like his boss fight does. He plays, I don't know, like, I guess, Zero in the Mega Man games. That's the closest thing I can put to it. I haven't really watched that much footage of it. I want to go into it as blind as possible. But it didn't translate the boss fight, is what I'm trying to say. Plague Knight did. Plague Knight plays kind of like his boss fight did. He has bombs that he uses kind of in his boss fight. That actually... There comes another statement that I need to rectify. The powder that causes flames to go across the floor, I think that's the Tracer powder. That one also has 2 bombs max, like the Sparkler powder. But back on topic. The boss fight and the character, how they play, it's pretty similar, you know. You have a couple different types of bombs. You can summon an item that he uses in the boss fight, the vat, though not exactly in the same way. The vat here is solely a platform, whereas in the boss fight it was a platform and something you could use as an attack to kind of destroy your enemies. And Plague Knight could teleport. He kind of does it here. Like, if he were to die via losing all his health or falling into spikes, you'd see him teleport away. And he kind of did during the boss fight with Shovel Knight. But a lot of stuff got translated from the boss fight into his gameplay, is what I'm trying to say. For Spectre Knight, it doesn't seem to be doing that And I like Plague Knights more right now because of that. I have no doubts that I'll like Spectre Knight and his campaign and stuff, but the fact that they got Plague Knight so right is very cool to me. And conversely, I think they got Shovel Knight very right as well when they made him into a boss fight. Like a lot of his moves and stuff. He didn't fight like Black Knight, which was what I was expecting. I was expecting him to be like a clone of Black Knight, but no, he had his relics. He had his own kind of things going on. His shovel drop acted differently. His he didn't have, I don't know, the same projectiles and stuff. So he played differently and that was cool. Or rather, he played the same and that was cool. That's what I mean. I didn't talk at all about the relic that we got on the stage because of that tangent. But the relic was the Berserker's Brew. At least that's what I recall the name to be. It basically makes Plague Knight like Kirby, I guess. In Kirby games, if you take damage, then you have invincibility frames after, of course, so you don't take damage afterwards. But if you were to run into an enemy while in that damage invincibility thing, you actually won't... Obviously, you won't take damage yourself, and you damage other enemies that walk into you. So it's like a double saving grace. The Berserker's Brew kind of does that second bit, where if you run into an enemy, you'll actually damage them. But at the same time, they're going to be damaging you, so it's only really worth it if you don't want to get knocked back, because it also cancels all knockback. Which might be very good for some platforming. Actually, I could have very much used it in the next stage and the previous stage, because those missiles that fly around in Medusa head patterns can mess you up quite a bit when going through the Clockwork Tower, especially when you're having to do some platforming. Anyway, we've reached the end of this here level. That is what I wanted to call it. Jeez, why did I forget that? And I'm going to be switching back to the Cluster Powder because it's really good against Polar Knight. Although I think the Sparkler Powder might take him down a tiny bit faster. I still like using the Cluster Powder. He's a big guy, so the Cluster Powder and the Sparkler Powder will do a lot of damage to him, because you're essentially hitting his entire body multiple times. And I tried to get the feat for beating a knight without getting hit, or rather, coming out of a boss fight unscathed, which I think means entering with full health and leaving with full health. I messed up. I took an entire dot of damage. But as you saw right there, I was basically inside of Polar Knight here, just spamming the Cluster Powder bombs while invincible with the Smoke Bomb, and it took him down pretty fast. So, yeah, there's Polar Knight. Very easy compared to in Shovel Knight, I think. Mostly because you don't have to deal with him protecting against shovel drops or things like that. And shovel drops was how I got off my charge slashes. And because Mona isn't here, we instead get some Percy dialogue. There is actually Mona dialogue for all of the last section of Knights, I guess you could say, as well as Percy dialogue for the last section. Depending on which one you start with, you'll get the first one with Mona and then the other two with Percy. So that's how that works. Another thing that's kind of different from the Shovel Knight campaign, at least my version of it, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be getting another armor. Or rather, another cloak. I misnamed this cloak earlier. I called it the Hard Robe. It's actually called the Ward Robe with a W instead of an H. They kind of look similar in sprite form, so you can't blame me. But this is the one that's the same as Shovel Knight's Momentum Mail, where you'll take less knockback when you get hit, and that's really, really useful for the next stage and the next boss fight. Because Plague Knight, I think, actually takes more knockback than Shovel Knight. I've died a lot more due to knockback in Plague Knight's version of the game than in Shovel Knight's version. So I decided to take some extra caution rather than quaff some Berserker's Brew 24/7. I just have the Tropical King spit on me so I can have extra defensive capabilities. I don't know how it works. Ichor is magical. This whole place is magical. Oh, that's right. Bio for Propeller Knight. I'll say that after I reveal this extra section here that I did not know about. I just happened to find it while practicing because I was using the, what was it? Sparkler powder, which has a much bigger radius, so I blew up the wall by accident, essentially. And I found this secret section with some extra money and a fishing spot. This might be the tropical fishing spot for Shovel Knight, because I don't recall it being anywhere else in Shovel Knight's version of the stage. Every other time it was either a music sheet or actual fish that gave you money. And also the positions of the jellyfish are different, of course, because we can't shovel drop off of them. We have to use our bomb bursts and such. Anyway. Oh. These Propeller Acolyte dudes also very susceptible to the Sparkler Powder. Finally, on the bio, let me just get to the Propeller Knight page. Okay. Propeller Knight commands the Enchantress's flying machine with the cocksure attitude of a sky pirate. With his heli helmet, he can zoom short distances with ease. Shovel Knight encounters Propeller Knight on top of the aircraft as it zooms through the sky. The Earth fights against air in a true battle of elements. Pros: talented fencer, mechanical heli helmet, and debonair. Cons: arrogance, lightweight, and outrageous accent. I'm not sure if lightweight means he's thin or he's not good at holding down his drinks, but whatever. I'd assume the opposite. Not to stereotype or anything. Actually, not at all stereotyping. He just seems like the kind of person who would drink, and he was also seen drinking wine in the second Tower of Fate stage. I'll just say that for now. Also, he has an accent. It's kind of hard to tell, but he does have a sort of French kind of accent. And the whole thing with him battling Shovel Knight, that's not happening here. We Plague Knight. So it's less, I guess, it's less earth versus air and more chemistry versus physics, I guess. Kind of like with Tinker Knight. Also, this is the Enchantress's ship, apparently. And the whole part about it going through the air is a lie, because it's not actually moving. It's on the world map, it's like chained down to a mountain or something. Kind of reminiscent of Little Planet in Sonic CD. At least that's what I'm immediately thinking of right now. Anyway, we got an extra section here. It's not too difficult and it's very short, at least compared to the other ones I find. And also, it's very hard to... Well, it was hard for me to see. I might have said this before. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did in Shovel Knight's part in one of the auto-scrolling up sections. But it's hard for me to see the edges of my screen because while recording in 720p, to actually get it to be 60 frames per second, I need to kind of cut off the edges on my TV screen so that it's like completely filling up my capture screen, if that makes any sense. So I couldn't really see it very well. That actually caused me to do a retake earlier because I skipped it without even noticing that it was there. That little mini boss was very, very simple thanks to the sparkler powder. I think with Shovel Knight it takes like 15 shovel drops. I just threw a ton of these bombs at it, and considering that it counts as a like solid object, the bombs would actually explode on it with the impact fuse. So that made it really, really easy. Of course, now we're heading to Chester's area. Well, not really his area, where his chest is in this flying machine. How does he even get to these places? And of course, he's not here like... Well, he's here of his own accord, is what I'm trying to say. He plants himself in these places so that you can, I guess, buy stuff from him. Anyway, we got the feat trading up for trading all of our relics for the Arcana. And this Staff of Swiping, I don't quite remember what it's called, but it's basically a small physical attack that you can do with Plague Knight. Probably really good for getting the feat that requires you to not use bombs in a boss fight, I think it was. No, it was defeat Shovel Knight in the Explodatorium without destroying any of the platforms underneath you. All of the bombs can destroy those, so if you decide to use the staffs of surging and swiping, I guess, then you'd probably not destroy anything underneath you and, you know, actually beat Shovel Knight without damaging the place. Also, there's a feat for using less than 15 bombs in a stage, which the staffs would be helpful for. I'm not sure if everything counts as a bomb, like the Berserker's Brew and the Leech Liquid and stuff definitely don't count as bombs. But at the Big Boom, the Bait Fish, I think it's called, or the Bait Bomb, and the Smoke Bomb possibly might count as actual bombs. So if you're trying to go for that feat, don't use those relics. Just kind of use the Staff of Swiping to deal with everything. It's also very light on the power cost. It only costs half a meter, or half a section rather. Whereas lots of other things either cost 1, 2.5, or 3. So that's pretty cool. Although I'm really not going to be using it here because that's very much a my own time kind of thing. I'll use it when I want to get all the feats, which I probably am going to do at some point later. I haven't done it at all yet, but I will be getting all the feats on my own time. Something a bit odd to deal with in Propeller Knight stage is the fans that push you upward. You'd think, like, while being pushed upward by, like, a different fan, like if you, say, get pushed up by a fan, double jump, and then land near a different fan that also pushes you up, you'd think that your double jump would reset, but it actually doesn't. And if you're using the float burst like me, you'll actually need to turn the burst off in order to, like, burst again while being carried by a fan. And it's something you don't really notice, because the fans have those sparkles that push you upwards. Well, not really push you upwards, but the fans have the sparkles and the float burst has the sparkles, so you don't think that you're actually using the float burst, but you do need to press it down again in order to start charging again in order to use the float burst. And we're pretty close to the end of the stage. Of course, these fans will do nothing for me in terms of helping me get across. But luckily I have the vat. And after fighting this little not Propeller Knight, I mean, it is a knight and it is using a propeller, it's just not a Propeller Knight. He really got in my face this time. Like, my practice run, he was basically stuck underneath me when I was going for that chest. This time he just got all up on my grill, as the children say these days. This section can be made kind of hard with the bursts, because you're going to rapidly ascend if the wind is carrying you upward and you perform a burst, so don't perform bursts. At least be careful with them, because you can hit your head on that, you know, row of stalactites hanging out over there. Now I'm just reminiscing about the whole stalactite tangent that I went on and kind of feeling disappointed in myself. Anyway, there's the last cipher coin. So what I like to do is I like to let the wind, well, after killing this flying rat, of course, I'll let the wind push me to the right and fall down by my, like, let it cause me to fall down, and then jump while underneath the platform and bomb burst, and that will probably get you across. And there's an extra platform here because, well, we can't get across without it. Well, we could if we had the vat, but technically that's also an extra platform. Getting what's in that fishing area, I think it's just a potion, but trying to get it is super difficult without the fishing rod because the bait bombs will explode on the cannonballs, which gets kind of annoying if you're trying to get whatever's down there. So now we fight Propeller Knight, and he can be kind of hard. In fact, he might be the hardest of the Order of No Quarter for Plague Knight here, because sometimes he just does not take damage from my bombs. Like, sometimes I'll throw them at him, it'll hit the ground or something, and he just won't take damage. And while he's flying up there, it can be pretty hard to hit him, but what I do is I switch to the lob casing and the short fuse, which more often than not will cause the bombs to explode pretty much right where he is. So that makes him very easy to deal with. And I'm taking out the vat just in case, because I have fallen many times because of knockback into those pits, and I want to kind of keep to the air. But thanks to my wardrobe here, I actually won't take very much knockback. I won't get knocked back into those pits, and everything's pretty good. If I could actually kill the guy. See, look at that. I threw a bomb at him just then, and it did not hit him. Only my second bomb did, for some reason. And just then, I did not actually press the shoulder button. My controller is actually getting wonkier to where all these shoulder buttons will start acting up. Well, not really all of them. Both of the right ones. No. Both of the left ones, yes. Both of the left buttons will actually start acting up now. So no matter which one I map the item select to, it doesn't really matter. Also, it kind of broke the pacing a little bit. Like, that's why I don't like switching bombs and why I kept using the black bombs. Well, the black powder, bounce casing, and normal fuse. Because, going into the menu constantly to switch through your bombs, I'd be fine with doing that on my own time, but for the sake of a Let's Play, it just bogs down to pace too much for me. So, I'll do it on occasion from now on, but still not as much as I do normally. And we combined all the essences into whatever that thing is supposed to be. Although technically we don't have all of the essences. There is one more that we need to collect from a certain someone waiting at the end of the Tower of Fate, but I gotta hand in the music sheets to Percy. I kind of forgot to do that. And also I want to change back into the treasure trappings because, well, I don't really need the extra knockback protection anymore. I think I'm pretty good. Also, as you can see, my health is at 7 normal dots and 3 of the extra green ones, but now it's back to 4 and 6 respectively. Which, again, is very lame. I mean, it doesn't really make any difference. Like, I still have 10 health either way. And I'm not dying, so I won't lose any of that extra health. It's just, I guess it's just kind of visually annoying. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, next time we'll be heading into the Tower of Fate.